Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. If you've been around the eLearning or instructional design space for any amount of time, you've probably, at least I hope so, have come across Jeff Batt. Now, if you haven't, well, let me introduce you to someone who's not just talking about the future of learning and development, he's out there actually building it. And, for those of you out there who know me, then you know what I really appreciate about people like Jeff is that he is a working practitioner. He is in the trenches, solving real problems and pushing boundaries and experimenting with new tools and not just, posting about it on LinkedIn. He brings a level of insight and practicality that you can only get from doing the real work. And it's something I called earn insight. And you know what? That is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with him today, because these days it's not enough to just be good with an authoring tool. If you want to create modern and engaging and interactive learning experiences, then you have to learn to think like a builder. And so in this chat, Jeff and I are going to dive into what's possible with vibe coding, how to use tools like Lovable and others to create fully custom digital learning experiences and websites and prototypes and web apps. And even he shows how you might be able to create your own authoring tool, which just blew my mind. So now, don't worry. If you're someone like myself who knows nothing about code and is easily intimidated by it, you're going to quickly discover how not intimidating any of it is. Now, before we dive into it, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell button to get alerted the next time I publish a video just like this one. And of course, join us inside our free community inside the eLearning Designers Academy at elearningacademy.io, where we help new instructional designers and e-learning developers grow their careers by focusing on skills first. All right, let's get to the cool stuff. So Jeff, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to do this. I guess I want to start off by saying this. For those of you who know me here, you know how important it is for people who create content in this industry. They're creating content based off earned insight. And I always think practitioners are better and stronger than influencers. And Jeff is somebody who I have so much respect for because you are a definition of a practitioner. You're somebody who actually has experience in the stuff that you share with the world. And it's all earned insight. It's not just hype that you've, you conjured up out of the air. And so can you tell everybody, just give us a quick introduction, a little bit about your background, experience, what you do, fun fact, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. I live in Utah, and I've been in this industry for, I think, almost 17 years. So I kind of fell into this industry like a lot of people. I actually went to school as a web developer, and this back in the day was Flash. And Flash was like the big thing. So most of my classes were on Flash. And then I got a job at a company called Rapid Intake, which was an e-learning software company. Had no idea what e-learning was. And then I just started building templates like inside of Flash for that software company. They've since gone out of business and were bought out and other things. But I got a job after I was there for about a good 7 years. Was helping run a conference called eLearning DevCon, and a new company called eLearning Brothers started up, and I got a job there for about a year, which is now ELB Learning.
Yep.
And then just kind of fell into various jobs, helping lead. I really liked the development part of learning. I don't so much emphasize on the instructional side. I've picked up a lot of that since I've been in there, been in this industry, but it's really comes back to I love the developments. I love to create content. I love to work with storyline, other things like that. I've also worked at Amazon. I've been doing my own YouTube channel, Learning Dojo. Have my own courses on Udemy. Have courses because I kind of have this development background. I've also created a lot of development courses on Pluralsight. So I just created my 9th course on Pluralsight as well. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to grab the link too, by the way. I wanted to put the link to your website. Jeff has a really great community that's also in Circle. He has a website and he has his courses, and check that out. And obviously go check out his YouTube channel. He does some really, really, really great content. And one of the things I love that you emphasized in your introduction, Jeff, is that your desire and passion for the development side of what we do. And one of the things I'm always trying to remind people is that, what it means to be an instructional designer does not fit into a single box. And the thing that's so great about our industry is that, if you're somebody who loves the technical side or the visual design side or the development side, there are roles out there where you can focus just on that. Or if you do enjoy the upfront parts, I'm like you, I do, like I would rather, I don't know, stick a pencil through my toe than do a needs analysis, and that's okay. There are roles out there where you don't have to do that, or there are other people that do it, or if you'd like to do it all, there are roles out there. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that validates that, right?
Yeah, I do get that question a lot. It's like, how have you made it this long in the industry by just doing development? And again, I have done, like when I was at Amazon, I did do instructional design,
Yeah.
but that's not really where I shined. Really, where I shined was the development side of things. And I think, like you're saying, there's in this industry, there's especially nowadays with this coding and vibe coding and other things like that. It helps. I don't think you have to be a coder, but it
No.
helps to understanding code concepts. And so, like what different types of components are, and variables and conditions and other things like that, which these tools make it easier, but it still helps to have that idea of what, okay, in order to do this, I need to store it inside of this, or I need to do this. And so it does help with that logic when you're creating these learning experiences, I think.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting too is, like, when you look at the arc of things. I mean, if we think to, like, when Storyline came out, it was during this, like, renaissance of making everything no code. Like, Storyline was a no code coding tool. We all understand, like, triggers are the way you write code without having to write code, and variables, and those are all, though, loosely based on, like, coding concepts. And so, like, it gave exposure to understanding the logic on the way things work on the back end. But it's been interesting to see in the last 6 months to a year with vibe coding, especially in the last month or so, like, there's now this, like, arc back towards, like, you mean I can really do code things and I don't have to write code?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see it, like, this idea of coding making this, like, comeback in a way.
Yeah, like when I first started, like I mentioned, it was Flash, and it was actually not out of the box to go in and create like a custom Flash interaction and put it inside of your e-learning tool. And
Yeah.
so whatever tool that you're using, you could go create something custom in Flash and then bring it inside of there. But then once it switched to Storyline, and stuff, we kind of went out of that mindset of like, no, I'm not going to use another tool. I'm just going to use Storyline to create it, which is cool because it can do a lot. But there was still kind of that people were afraid to explore a little bit more of that custom side. But that's really where my channel and what I talk about really comes into play, is to help people identify that, hey, you are using coding concepts, even though you're
Yeah.
not a coder. You're using variables, you're using condition, you're using layers, you're hiding stuff, you're showing stuff, that kind of thing, which hopefully I try to break it down to hopefully that makes sense. And then it helps them become a better developer inside of the standard tools. Even if you
Yeah.
just stick with Storyline and stuff, I think it helps, at least you create better content that way. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Well, so before we jump into some demonstration and we can get into some more examples and talking about it. So I think, when I posted about this earlier this week, when AI first started, generative AI first started, you know, getting talked about more, let's say 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I think, like, there was always this question in the back of my mind and a lot of other people's minds who have been in this industry for a long time, of like, okay, so if I can just type in blah, 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 and AI can generate content, or it can generate an image, and now it can generate a video. I think the question has always been, like, how far are we out from typing something into AI and it's going to generate an interactive thing or a website or a whole e-learning course or all of that stuff? And I don't, obviously I don't think we're completely there yet. I don't know if we ever will be, but I got to say, when you think about what I've seen you create with vibe coding, the things that I've just dabbled with and created, it's super compelling. And I'll be the first to admit that, like, I think the first time I really started hearing about vibe coding, it was Mel Milloway talking about it. And not that I, like, rolled my eyes about it, but I was just like, come on, like, this is crazy. And coding is so intimidating to me. I don't know anything about code. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And like, what are your thoughts on typing in something and creating a whole e-learning course? Like, where do you think we are on that timeline? And then what, for the group who isn't familiar with like the concept of what vibe coding means, or they seem more intimidated by it than it really is because it's not intimidating. Like, how would you define that for folks?
Yeah, and honestly, I'm on the fence with the term because vibe coding to me seems like almost like lazy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't need to learn everything, but which you don't. But it's
Mm-hmm.
more of you still need to understand some of the principles and still need to understand like, hey, if I want to create an application where people log in and it resumes their saved progress, I need to be able to work with the database. So you have to
Yeah.
at least have to understand that you are going to need some type of database. But I think really where I'm a little bit more okay with it when it like makes it easier to do.
Mm.
Because even though I'm a coder and I've coded in the past, there are some things that are well beyond my limit. And so there are things that we like. I remember in one organization, we storyline wasn't going to make the cut, and that's fine. And
Mm.
so I worked with a web developer to create a custom experience. And so we created like a whole swiper using a framework called Swiper AI. We created an entire course that was all custom, and then we
Mm.
put it inside of a SCORM wrapper. So that can actually, that could have been done. That custom learning experiences could have been done before, but now with some of these tools, if you understand some of those concepts still, you can still create a full interactive course just by prompting and
Yeah.
just by I think it still helps to understand kind of the code structure. It helps to understand like, okay, I will have HTML files, I will have CSS files, I will have JavaScript files, and understand that JavaScript is the behavior, CSS is the style, and HTML is like the different elements. Understanding that does help, and that's where I'm like, okay, it's not just lazy coding, it's more of a it's now almost like a magic. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, it's almost like a magic wand. Like your Harry
Mm.
Potter, you have this magic wand and you still need to know the spells. And this will show my nerdiness, but you still need to know the spells. They still need to train. They still need to go to school. They still need to understand the concepts, but you don't need to know the specifics of the code.
Yeah.
You don't need to know exactly that this is doing this in the code. And so there is that still kind of, I don't know if that makes sense, but there's
Yeah.
that level of like, you still need to understand some concepts in order for it to get the right output from AI, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll categorize myself as a lazy coder. Like I don't like you taught me that the CSS is the style and the JavaScript is the function or the BA. I would have not known that. And I don't know why it's called JavaScript. Every time I think of that, I'm like, they had to have been in a coffee shop when they came up with that name or something. Or like
Well,
what was happening in the person's life when they called it Python? I don't want to know. But
something.
yeah, either something like really scary or really inappropriate. I have no idea. But um, I wrote down. I didn't write this down. I was thinking about this yesterday. It feels like to me when I've been vibe coding, and let's get into some examples here if you have some to pull up, or otherwise I can pull some up. It feels like I'm sitting next to somebody who's a coder, and I'm like, hey, I want this to do this, and it goes, oh yeah, let me figure it out and do it for you. And so it almost feels like this. I'm gonna share my screen real quickly.
Yeah.
This image on your website actually makes me go, this is what it feels like. So I'm gonna pull this up. It feels like this to me. Like I'm here going like, hey, I want this to happen, and then this person's doing it. They're the coder. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like you're an orchestrator, right? And there's just a person like doing it on that end. So
Well,
um,
that's exactly what I was doing when I was at this organization and we built a custom thing. Is this
mhm,
web developer was going well beyond my knowledge. And so, but I still had to understand the components enough and I still had to understand, okay, now let's make it do this. Now have
yeah,
it do that. Now we need to create a quiz. Now we need to have that quiz report over. So that's really what you're doing is you're more of this director. You're more of the person to go back to the Harry Potter example, you're more the person saying the spell rather than actually doing the spell.
yeah,
And that really, in my mind, is you're working. You now have access to this this development team, and you're saying, okay, now let's make this happen. Now let's do this happen. But
mhm,
understanding the high level like components enough to be able to direct it, I think helps. But
Yeah, well, and one thing I wrote down that we'll talk about once we get into it is the importance of imagination. That's the thing that I've learned with AI is that it requires you to be able to utilize your imagination so that you can describe something to, in this case, the AI. So let's get into some examples. Do you have, I don't know, I think the first video I saw from you was like a task management app or a financial tracking app. Can we open the hood and take a look at some of that if you have it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's see what we come up with.
Let me put this off. Okay. So there I've got a bunch. Like I'll give this warning. This becomes addicting.
It
Like
is.
when you're working with it, yeah, you're like, okay, now do this, now do that. And that's the thing I think just overall, just understand that this is like iterative. And so it's not going to be something where you initially, because when you come to Lovable,
I put
this
the
is
link to that in
something,
chat, by the way, for everybody. This
yeah,
is a vibe coding
thank
app.
you.
Yeah.
So Lovable, there's other tools like Replets, there's other Bolt is another one. There is tools that you download to your desktop called Cursor. There's a bunch of these different tools out there. And Lovable, I think, has been my favorite because it actually, as far as what I've been able to learn, it allows you to get access to the code, so it doesn't always have to live on Lovable. You can move it to your own website. You can move it to your own AWS server, whatever. And so that is one of the reasons why I've kind of been drawn a little bit more to it. But
It's very friendly and approachable too.
yeah, exactly. And it's for anyone who is afraid of code or has not even touched code, it's a good starter point, I think.
That's me.
I know, yeah, I know Mel uses Replit from what
Yeah.
I've seen of her videos and stuff. That one is still kind of a little bit user friendly, but it's a little bit harder to like get out and to deploy than what I've seen with Lovable. So, but you know, get the tool that works best for you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So right here, it just starts out with a prompt, and don't feel like you need to prompt everything as far as the functionality. What I like to do is break it down into like, okay, I'm going to create this checklist, or I'm going to create this task app. I want to have projects on the left-hand side. I want to have tasks on the right, and I want to be able to add those different tasks and stuff like that. So it starts out with one initial prompt. And as you, each time that you actually type something in there, that's in Lovable, that's what's called a credit. And you have 5 credits as part a day as part of the free plan. So every single day you can go in there and give it 5 different prompts and make some progress for free. You
And
don't have to do anything.
I
Yeah.
was amazed at how far you could get with just those 5 credits. Because you could put a whole lot into the one prompt to get a lot done, even with just like 1 credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I mean, you can give it a lot of instructions in one prompt, but I find if you're giving it too much direction, sometimes it like ignores some things that you've been asking it to do,
Hmm.
and so that's why I'm like, yeah, give it some good detail, but probably just like a developer, just let them focus on a certain couple things at a time, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you can get a lot with those 5 credits. And then up there, you know, people always ask about pricing. So I think the first level is like $20 a month. And on top of that, you still get the 5 credits every day. So even
Oh,
though with like the $20 a month plan, you can get like, I think 100
100. Yeah.
credits. Yep. But then times that by 5 for every day of the month, you now have like almost 200 credits basically for that lowest plan.
Hmm.
But that's what gets you back in every day, I think, and that's what becomes addicting. Is like, oh, I need to go use my 5 free credits and stuff. But
Yeah,
um,
when I was doing it for free, I used them up real quickly, but then that time, that 24-hour period, like it gave me time to reflect on like what do I really want to accomplish next with it? And it just like, yeah, you're right. They very strategically fed into like this exploratory addictive nature of it
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're in a project, let me just go inside of one first, and then I'll show you kind of the UI for those of you who have not seen it. So over on the left-hand side, this is really where you're prompting it. And so you give it some initial prompts of like, that was a simple one, but this is last night. I was implementing some security updates, but um, so trying to find a good one here. Oh, change the background of the task to a light shade if the red task is 2 days away from being passed due. So
Mm.
that was one of my prompts, and pretty much what happens um, when you log in here is it has like, if this is like 2 days away from being due, and I'll walk through this app here in a second, but I just want to show kind of that prompt. It changes the color. So just that one little focus of like change the color if the due date is in 2 days or less, to red. So it just highlights that is due basically. I know I just kind of jumped in, but I wanted to just
That's
show
fine.
that prompt and then here as well. But this one, it takes a little bit more implementing for like creating a login. So I wanted to have the user log in and then save their projects so they can come in and create a new project on the left-hand side. And let me go into the full screen of this. But they could create new projects on the left-hand side, and then once they go into that project, they have like a task list. And so you can come in here and create a new task, and then you can add a description and give it a due date and stuff. One of my favorite task lists or apps is called Things. But one thing it never did is it didn't allow me to like save like daily updates of like, I did this, I did that kind of thing. And so that was one of my main goals was to come in here, and when I click on the task is to add progress notes. So I can come in here and add like a little note and click on that, and it has like a date of that progress notes. And so those were things that I just added little by little, and I've been working on this one since February. So it's had like, a lot of things done to it. Like one of the things was like when you open it, I wanted to have like the text editor up on top. I wanted to have a due date. I wanted to have a priority. I wanted to have a focus on today filter where I can turn it off and on. I wanted to have subtasks. I wanted to have progress notes.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to do attachments and stuff like that. And so those are all things that, little by little with the prompts, I was able to add and to update and iterate on it. So, but
Well, if
I didn't
you're
touch a single line of code on this. So
Yeah, so can we talk? I wrote this down earlier when we were preparing for this session. One of the things that I learned really quickly in playing with it was the importance of iteration and QAing what I'm building. So, one of the things I've noticed is like, and I have an example I can actually, if you're willing, I'm going to share my screen real quickly.
yeah,
I'll pull up an example. Let me share my screen. I'll pull this on over. I've been playing around with creating a dummy system that I can use for training purposes when teaching how to create a screen recording or simulation. And I created this. This is not the one that I ultimately created that I used, but I wanted to create a dummy CRM, And one of the things that I've noticed with Lovable is like, this prompt was like, hey, I want to create a CRM that mimics Salesforce, right? And I've never used Salesforce. My partner has used Salesforce. He said this looks a lot like the Salesforce interface, so I trust him. But one of the things I've noticed is that when it creates these interfaces, it will sometimes put in things that actually aren't functional, right? It's just like it's starting off with like a basic interface. So like here's a notification icon. There's no notifications. There's no settings here. If I click here and do profile, none of that is functional. I would have to continue iterating on it to make it functional. Or the other thing that I've noticed is like, now that I know, like CSS stylistic inconsistencies. So I've noticed, like you might have all these buttons look a particular way on one screen, but then if you go to another one, it might have a different style, right? So can you talk a little bit about like that iterative QA process that's been important in using this?
Yeah, there is something to say with like you're creating this product, and there is a whole field called product management that really, in my mind, if you're a product manager, you need to be an expert in the tool. Whatever product that you're working with, you need to be the one that is, you're using it daily, you're experiencing it, you're creating content in it, things like that, because that helps you understand what is working, what is not working, and it helps you be an expert in the tool as well. And so there are several things that when you come in here and you're working on stuff, initially there you won't have something working. And so and this is the kind of the task app, or sorry, the finance app that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And this is not my real data at all. But if you come in here, there's things like, okay, well, this page says current money, but I don't have anything actually working. And initially Lovable will actually create a button here, but it doesn't actually save it to a database or anything like that. And so that becomes, as I'm testing it out and I click on add account and I try to add something and it's not working, that's the next iterative thing that I need to go prompt. And so I
Yeah.
go into Lovable and I say, okay, on the add account, I want to go ahead and save this so the user has this when they log back in. And you don't even have to say database, but just saying the fact that, okay, I want this to save each time that I log in and pull back up. That will prompt Lovable enough for you to know that it needs to have a database. So you can use your own language. You don't need to use the term
Yes.
CSS. You don't need to use the term HTML, JavaScript, or anything like that. But you need to, for the CSS problem, that's one thing I was getting at, is like some of these edit icons were different across every single page. And so Lovable kind of treats every single page as its own instance. And so that was another prompt, is I basically told it, on every single page, I want the pencil icon to look like this.
Yeah.
And what I do all the time is actually I come in, let me go to that one, where I just come in and I take a screenshot. And so on that screenshot, and I then go into Lovable and I just drag that screenshot right into Lovable. And I say, I want all the pencil icons or the edit icons to look like this. And that's really all that I have to do. And then it gets it from that image, and then it can go across every single page and do that.
Well, I think I have so much I want to say about that. Like the first thing one of the things I realized recently, I shared a video about a while back, is that I think a lot of people have gotten what it means to have an AI skill set all wrong. Like a lot of people think it's like, oh, you got to learn these tools. But then when you start playing with these tools, you realize that there isn't a whole lot of magic to using them. They're the tools doing the work. You're just like saying like, hey, do this, or copying and pasting text. I really think the real skill set is learning how to get comfortable with collaboration. And the real skill set is learning how to be specific about what you want. And those are actually human skills. And so as I think about like what you just described there, what you just did is no different than if you were messaging a real developer over Slack saying, hey, I need all these icons to look like this. You know, it's just collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically saying, oh, can you change this? Can you, I mean, exactly what we do in Storyline. And that's why I like to emphasize that what you're doing in Storyline directly relates to anything development. So anything development, you're basically creating, like an e-learning course, you're creating a product. But as that product, you need to be an expert. And I have seen this trap with instructional designers, is especially new instructional designers, is they won't test the course. So they don't go through the course as a learner. And so I ran into this issue with my organization where people were getting stuck when they were trying to take a course, because they were going back to this menu, this branching menu. When they come back to it, the developer was trying to use a timeline based thing, and so the logic wasn't working well. But the developer never actually, the instructional designer or developer, whoever it was, never tested it. So they never actually went back and tried to create all the branching stuff. But I mean, here you need to do the same thing that you do inside a Storyline, where you're going through, you're testing your content, you're testing your apps, you're iterating on it. It's not going to be perfect. There's always, every app you create right now or you work with right now always has updates, always has new things that come out. So,
well, yeah, it's great that you bring this up, because all of the same things I use, like you said, I do in Storyline when I'm developing, applies here. Like when I was testing some of the stuff I was creating, if I can share my screen real quickly, I'll show another example here. Let me go back. I'll share my screen and then I'll go back to the actual thing I want to share. So if I come back to my Lovable dashboard here, let me find the one I want to share. Let's do, we'll just do this one here. This is I have a hypothetical company called Webistia that I use for training purposes. And this was the fake CRM that I actually created. And it's amazing. All these little things, like uploading the logo and like putting that in here and saying, hey, this is the logo, use that here. Or I told it I would love to have like a mesh gradient animated background. It's been amazing what it can do. But one of the things that I've had to do multiple times is, like, just like you do in Storyline, I always tell people when you're QAing, you want to do the thing that you don't want the learner to do. because that's the thing
Yeah.
they're going to do. You don't want to just
Click on everything.
click
Yeah.
on everything and do the things that not for what you designed it to do, but try to do all the things you designed it not to do. That's where you're going to find all your errors. So whether it was like adding a customer in here, and then like what happens if I click cancel? And then what happens if I click here and I view this customer? And then what happens if I delete it? And then does it come back? And like all of those things, I discovered all sorts of little bugs that I had to fix and iterate on. And one of the cool things too, I'll share this too about Lovable that I've enjoyed when you chat with it is, obviously you can give Lovable instructions here, but you can also enable this chat mode. So if you have something you're trying to accomplish and say, I don't want to mess up with this instance of it, let's go to a different one. I'll show you. That's not one that I want to keep or maintain.
Yeah.
This one here, you can enable chat and like just chat with the AI without implementing changes. So if you wanted to say, this looks great, but I'd like, I don't know, what's some functionality we'd want to put on here? I have no idea. I'd like the text on the screen to display the current date and time. Is that possible? I'm totally making up something stupid. It's not going to implement those changes, but it's going to think and it's going to create a plan of action, and then you can choose to implement it. So it's like
and that saves you credits too.
Yes.
So as you chat, it's actually not using your credit. So if you're not quite sure on what to implement, you basically chat it through here, come up with a plan, and then implement it like you're saying. Yeah.
Right. And then you can say implement this plan. Or if you have something specific that's not working, I use this edit feature a lot where you can click this and then you can choose a specific element you need to edit. So like maybe I want to say, can we make this box more visible to the user? It's hard to see. I'm just making that up, right? And it's going to go ahead and it's just going to edit that one particular thing, right? So it's all about the collaboration and being really, really specific. And so it said, I'll make the demo credentials more prominent with better contrast and visibility. Let's see what it comes up with.
Now, have you reverted back to an old version before?
Yes, I did. I made a boo-boo with one of them. And so, yeah, if I wanted to. So it implemented that. We can see it change that here. And then I can come back in here. And let's just go back to this one. And then
it'll allow you to test an old one. And then it will allow you to restore to that version if you need to.
Yeah. So let's talk about using this. I mean, we've been talking about like apps and platforms. I'd love to get your thoughts on this because this is something you said to me. I'll stop sharing. You were saying that you think the future of stuff like this is rather than L&D teams, or I guess companies, but let's focus on L&D, rather than L&D teams going and procuring expensive platforms and softwares for internal use cases. There's a future where we're just going to create our own. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think, honestly, it is going to be, we're going to kind of see a shift in these types of tools because, in my opinion, and I'll share another tool.
Yeah.
And so this is a checklist app. So this one is a simple kind of, as I was showing Lovable, somebody was asking, hey, can I create a new hire checklist? And to me, a new hire checklist is a pretty simple thing. But I'm like, okay, what if I did create an app that was actually a checklist, something that I can share out with people and then keep track of progress to see if they've done? Because when you get hired as a new employee, or even if you're like, a manager and you're wanting to ensure that people have done this, this, and this, I'm like, how can I keep track of that? So it got me thinking of like, okay, instead of trying to find a vendor for, to meet the needs, when you have a need like this, you're able to create a custom interaction, a custom app that solves your need specifically to you, rather than trying to go find a vendor that will actually almost meet the need, but you kind of have to fit your process into it. And so that's where, I was thinking about that. And I was like, this is really where I see things going. It's going to take a different mind, like a shift in L&D in order to do this. But if people are able to embrace this type of software like Lovable, then they can really basically create an app that solves the need. So in
Well,
this
and
case, yeah, go ahead.
think about, I know you've probably experienced this, Jeff, and I know other people here have, I can think of so many times where I've been at work put on a project where we need to create just like a place to host resources and make an intuitive place, and like the amount of days and hours that have been spent like trying to get something to work on your internal intranet or SharePoint. Kill me if I have to ever work in SharePoint again. Like if you could create like just a quick one-stop shop that has some basic functionality, interactivity, you can deploy it right away. Like you could solve
Yeah.
things instantly.
And you're able to, because then the question becomes is like, how do I track it? Do I have to put it in an LMS and everything? And I'm like, no, because you're working with the database. You don't
Yeah.
actually have to put it in LMS. So if you come in here for like this task list, right? So I'm able to come in and create, and I created dividers, I created checklists and things like that. Then I want this participant link here. So in the participant link, this is where I can send it out to people. And all they have to do in this case is enter in their name and email. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my name and email. And it will keep track of where I was at with the name and email because I've already logged in. In this case, I've already logged in. So it keeps track of what I've done and what I haven't done. But it also sends it back over to the admin side. So if I come into the admin side, I'm able to pull up the analytics, not having it inside of an LMS at all.
That's
So I'm
crazy.
able to see like pending, who's completed it, what due dates are people past due on that. Then I'm able to break it down into like, okay, this person is 50%, this person is 25% complete, this person has completed one task, and I can see specifically the tasks that are created. So it's kind of that mindset of like, oh, I can track anything. I can create this app to solve the need, and I can really track anything that the learner is doing. Now,
It's like
there are things like you have to worry about security and stuff,
of
but
course,
the
yeah.
possibility is there. Yeah.
It's like you created a really light, fit for function learning experience slash LMS all in one that's just for like one specific unique task. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's where I think an organization, if they really want to embrace this, is like, okay, where are the needs? Do you really need to have a new hire checklist? Well, go and create a new hire checklist that solves it for your organization. And I don't have to host it here. When learners are going to it, I can actually take it and host it somewhere else. I can put it on my own server. So you don't have to worry about security of it being on Lovable and stuff like that. But it's just that possibility of like, oh, we have this need. Let's go into Lovable. Let's create a piece of software that will solve that need. And this is something that I'm then able to like create like these dashboards and other things like that. But I'll show you something that I'm just playing around with too. Unless you had a comment. Go ahead.
Real quick question about the hosting. So like for everyone's context, like let's take Storyline because I think that's a good common level set ground that we can all understand. When you publish out of Storyline as the web files and you go put that on AWS, or if you host it wherever you happen to host it, Google Cloud, can you help explain for everybody the equivalency of that here? Because just like with Storyline, you're generating a code package, that's my layman term for it. This is no different than that. How would you describe that in a way
That's
that
exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you publish from Storyline to an LMS or just to web, you get several files. You get a folder and then several files inside of that. When you create something inside a Lovable, Cursor, Replit, whatever, you get several files. And so this one right here are several kind of HTML, CSS folders, JavaScript files, basically. And just like if you were to take, because I know you've created a video, I've watched your video on, I think it was Google Cloud, and then AWS, and I've created videos on AWS and stuff like that. Just like you do with a Storyline file and you want to host it somewhere, you basically take all these files and upload it to AWS, or you upload it to Google Cloud, and you just point it to the index.html file.
Yeah.
So that's like the main always starter file in web development. With Storyline, it's story.html, but with regular web, it's index.html.
Well, I think what this does is it challenges. I think a lot of people, we're stuck with our line of thinking of like L&D companies have to have, or companies have to have an LMS to host and distribute courses, but that's really not necessarily true. Like not everything we create has to be an LMS, but it also doesn't mean that just because it's not in an LMS, it's not trackable. right?
Right.
So like we can have our cake and eat it too, where it doesn't have to be in the LMS, but we could still have some form of trackability on it,
Yeah.
which is, I think, kind of the point you're making.
Yeah, and then you want to see like, okay, we definitely want to take the data from the LMS and from other sources and combine it together. But that's really where ChatGPT comes into play too. I mean, or not ChatGPT, of like Copilot, if you're if a Microsoft organization, and you can take that to like analyze, put the two data points together and say, analyze this data for me, and it will create graphs and other things for you to help make sense of the data and combine the data as well.
And I think what's powerful too is this is not all companies have LMSs. LMSs are incredibly, trust me, I've had to implement and negotiate them. The last company I worked for, our LMS was $250,000 a year for 5,000 people. And so like not all companies can afford an LMS. And so this still provides an option where, again, it's informal, it's trackable. So I think that's super compelling, So sorry, go ahead and share the crazy thing you were going to share.
Well, I've explored in using another tool. There is another tool called Cursor.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in chat.
Cursor is a desktop tool, and it is intimidating because you have a chat window on the side, but instead of a nice visual, it does show you the code. You don't have to touch the code, but it does show you the code. And so that's where I've seen people, when I've presented this in the past, people have like got up and left because they're like, I can't look at code. I've had people like at Demo Fest at DevLearn come to when I was demoing something I built custom, and they're like, is that code? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And they left.
No.
I'm like, okay. They wouldn't even look at it. But Cursor is similar to that. And I because I've built courses, and I love Storyline, I love Rise, that they'll always have a place in my teaching and everything like that, and my developments. And it's really not like the tool, it's more of like, okay, what solves the need? Is this custom route going to do better than Storyline? Am I going to be able to create some content better in this than I am other ones? So that's really where my mindset goes. But I've created a lot of like these custom learning experiences where this is a full like e-learning course. So this is all, I didn't code anything, but you have your course menu on the left-hand side. You have your different, basic layouts like pages, which are responsive as well. So they adapt, to your screen size. And then I tried to create something that was very similar to Rise. So I'm not selling this or anything, but I'm like, can I create like an accordion? Which an accordion is a very basic web tool out there. So like anybody that uses web development can build an accordion. It's not just something that's in Rise. And so these are different things. That was a tab interaction. But these are different things that I've played around with. Like this one I really like because you can scroll through, and then you can pop up like this modal with like different things, and it like leaves a check mark here. But I'm like, can I build, not that I'm ever want to compete with Rise or anything like that, but I'm like, can I use Lovable to create an authoring tool?
Yeah.
And so I've actually been playing around with that. And so
oh my God,
this is
really blowing my mind.
This is very much in its infancy. So it's definitely something I still have to keep working through. But you can see right here, if I go into this project, I can go in and I can add. So here's my course menu. With that idea in mind, what I showed you before, I can go in and add contents. If I want it in the full column, 2 columns, I'll do the full width, add a block. And now I have different blocks like course title, media blocks, interactive blocks like accordion, flashcards, element blocks. And it's not like Rise. Like I like the full screen a little bit better. And so it's basically similar to this, where it takes up let me go here. It takes up the full screen. So it's almost like a hybrid of Storyline and Rise put together in a way, where we have page to page content. But then let me go back into here. And then it's just a simple like little form that you fill out and text here. But when you preview it, it's a very similar experience to what you were seeing before.
It looks a lot like those LMS-based authoring capabilities almost. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which,
and
go ahead.
This was fully just kind of like, can this be done? This is not something that I would ever implement or try to compete with Rise or anything like that. But I'm like, can it be done? and this is what I was exploring. So you have like videos and blocks
Yeah,
and
but like
images.
think about those companies out there that can't afford authoring tools, right? Like what's stopping them from creating their own little in-house proprietary tool? You know what I mean? Or something. If you create something cool, like if you create something cool that's going to be a learning object, well, why not also build the little authoring tool that you use to create it and duplicate it, and then it becomes scalable in that way, you know?
Yeah,
Like this blows my mind.
because then going to checklists, because I can track things in checklists, maybe I could actually create, like if people are viewing this, what pages they viewed and what flashcards did they click on, things like that, that I'm able to work just solely in this database and track just based off of that alone. It's
So
kind of my mindset.
my ultimate question, and this is a good point to bring this up, is like, what do you think this sort of stuff is going to force not just e-learning authoring tool companies like Articulate or Adobe or any of the other ones? Like, it makes me go, well, why? If as people start using this, I think people are going to naturally go, why can't I vibe code interactions in Storyline? Why can't I just tell it to do it and it creates the states, layers, triggers, and variables for me? What do you think this is going to do in terms of pressure on these technology companies, authoring tool companies?
I think they have to get to that point where it's just prompts. So as I'm over on the left hand side, especially Rise, if I'm over
Yeah.
on the left hand side, have some type of like AI assistant on the left where I'm like, create me a page with this and interaction, but go beyond just like what's out of the box, those blocks. Go beyond that and allow you to create like a custom interaction or something like that. I think it's going to force them to do that. If they're smart, they'll do that. And they'll create this more type of like, or even inside a storyline, being able to use the AI assistant to say, I need to create a tab interaction with 4 tabs, and then have it at least create an initial tab interaction with 4 tabs for you that you can then go in and edit.
Yeah.
It's a big ask, but I think that's where tools need to get to in order to compete with these types of tools, in
Well,
my opinion.
and this is purely my opinion. I'm not going to challenge you on this one, Jeff. I think, like, this week we saw the new custom blocks and Rise. I think this is the custom blocks and Rise I would have loved to have seen versus adding shapes onto a screen. That's my opinion. That's a separate thing.
Yeah. Again, I love Articulate, don't get me
They're
wrong,
great. Yes.
but I think the custom blocks should have happened a few years ago.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
but but I'll take them. I'll take them. That's the thing. I do get when people complain about it. It's like, oh, we should have had this, but I'll take it whenever they can get it.
Yeah.
But I think this is really where it needs to go is like, okay, I need to create a custom block and then have like a real AI kind of coding assistant on the left hand side or right side, or basically just being able to help me create custom content through there. I think they need to get to that point to stay competitive, in my opinion.
Well, I think there's a lot of authoring tool companies out there that are working really hard to implement updates that would have been relevant 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And so it's just hard when we see stuff like this, like what you just demoed. It's hard to see, like, you have to rapidly change your direction if you want to stay relevant, because before you know it, I'm going to be vibe coding my own authoring tool for our company,
Yeah.
So
And there's some challenges. I'm not saying that's even like the full solution, because if you create your own tool, you're going to have to support it. So
yeah.
there are things, and I think people, when I worked at Amazon, they created like 18 different LMSs.
Don't they have like their own internal like Slack or something, like IM tool? Yeah, that they created.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it. It's been a couple years since I've been there, but yeah, they had their own Slack, but they also use Slack, and so it was weird. They had tools like everywhere, but I don't think when people create these custom tools, they don't realize that it does also mean that you're going to have to support the tools throughout the years, and then continually update them. And that's really what a product is. And in my mind, that's what e-learning courses are. E-learning courses are not just one and done. Oftentimes, you have to go back in, you have to maintain it, you have to make sure that the UI is updated, that you have to make sure that it's published in the latest player, just things like that, where there is that product management part of it that comes into play, where you're constantly iterating, you're constantly working on it, constantly improving it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we're coming down to our last 8 minutes or so. I'm going to jump into the Q&A pod, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. I'm going to answer them in the order in which they've been upvoted. So let's look at this first one. Let's keep our screen up too, because this is a can you show us? Or maybe not. I don't know. Mo wants to know, can you show us an example of how we could create something in Lovable and then bring it into the Rise or storyline? I would love to see the process, how we connect them. Yeah, I think this is I've been asked this question too about Lovable, and I don't know if Lovable is the right vibe coding solution for that, because I've played with vibe coding, like simple JavaScript to make like confetti happen, when you finish something. But can you talk a little bit about, like, is there a use case for doing something in this that would come into storyline?
So if you're creating a full application like this, I wouldn't embed it inside a Rise or storyline at all. So it's because you have a separate login or anything like that. But if you're creating something like a portfolio page, for example, something that's not requiring a login, and I don't think I have an example of it, but there is like a portfolio, if it's just regular HTML, things like that. Well, this one is actually not a login yet, but this is the GSnap tool that I've created. You do have to get it to something like GitHub in order to get the code. And GitHub is like a hosting kind of, like, it will keep track of versions and things like that. But once you get the code for it, you basically take that code, go host it on an AWS server. And once you have that link, you can go into Storyline, you can go into Rise, and there's an embed. And you can do like a web object embed. And then it basically is a web object in it. A web object is like a window to another website.
Yeah.
So it's just like, here is what I'm going to show another website. So if you can get this, I mean, in fact, you don't even have to get it to another website. You could just take the published version of this, and that's your embed. So you then go into Storyline and say, here's my link. Make sure that you have enough room on the embed window, and then the learner can work with it right inside a Storyline there. So
yeah.
Hopefully that answers the question. But
yeah, thank you for that. All right, next question. Zainab wants to know, hey Zainab, for most devs already working with authoring tools and LMS, vibe coding an app and implementing it may be complex. For coding small interactions to implement via a JavaScript trigger or Mighty and Rise, what tools would you recommend? I have no idea. I know it's amazing I knew that she meant JavaScript with JS. That's how much I don't know anything about coding.
Well, good job on that. I always use JS now that I forget that not everybody knows what JS means. It's like, so I don't know, for coding small interactions and implement them into Rise, I'd almost think, I kind of like the approach that I think on the video that you did on Tuesday was when you released, where you talked about like a little interaction where, like, I forgot, it was the second one that you did, or it wasn't the portfolio, it was the other interaction.
Oh, let me share my screen and I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
Let me.
So things like that, maybe they live on their own. Maybe they don't have to be embedded. Maybe you can link to it from Rise or Storyline, or you can try the embed code, but maybe
like the simple, like a simple tabbed interaction or something like this. This is just click, 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 right? I don't know. Like, it would be I would be curious to know if you could embed this with an HTML embed into
if you click
Rise.
Publish.
Yeah.
And then you do like right there, the publish site, you can actually just take that URL and you can just put it inside of a web object inside of Storyline. Rise, I'm not sure. I think in Rise you can, like, because you can do that with YouTube videos. That's basically what a YouTube video is. So yeah, I assume you can do that.
Yeah, it's worth experimenting with. I was attempting the very first thing I did, I created, this is going to be so inappropriate, but it's my show, so I get to do whatever I want. For the longest time, I've wanted to do a funny haha e-learning course, and it's very tongue in cheek, but I've always joked about it. I've always wanted to create an e-learning course on, where is it? Storyline Wizard, is it the sales at a urinal protocol? Because, like, we need men never get trained, young men, on like, what urinal do you go to? Like, there is an unspoken rule about where you go when you walk into a bathroom, and the right answer is you take the far left urinal, right?
Yeah.
And correct. And then, okay. And now what do you do? Right? Which one do you go to? Right? There's rules there. I can't remember what the point of what you were asking was going to say, but like little learning things like this. So,
Yeah. So that kind of stuff though is like, yeah, there are some unspoken rules that's
yeah.
when they're not followed, it's very
What
uncomfortable.
do they do when they say crazy weather? Huh? You just nod
Yeah.
silently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that is like you can take like stuff like that, those interactions, and if you can build it in storyline, it probably would function better inside a storyline. But if there's something where, and this is like with images, if you can build it inside of storyline, do that because it's less file size.
Yeah.
But you can, if there's something you can't do in storyline, then and that's really where your learners are going to be going to it, then maybe you can embed it, create it inside of here, create that link, go into storyline, go into Rise, just paste in the URL, and then they don't even know that it was created in Lovable. It's just like a little window into Rise or storyline. I think that would work just fine. So
Well, I think too, what's like a really healthy exercise for everybody is, again, sometimes you have to think outside of the limitations that you perceive that you have in your organizations and ask yourself, like, what could we create if we didn't have an LMS? What would I do? Let's pretend Storyline didn't exist, but you still needed to create something digital and interactive. Because I think sometimes we have very much this like one track thinking of like, well, Storyline's the e-learning authoring tool, so we got to get it to work in Storyline. Well, like, what if we didn't get it to work in Storyline? Could we still create something viable that meets the need for the organization? What if it couldn't be published in the LMS and we didn't need it to be? What if you had to build it today? You know what I mean? And I think that kind of thought experiment challenges you to think about solutions that you wouldn't otherwise come up with, right?
yeah, can the learning or will it be better if it's outside of the LMS as well? Like if I just click to it from a SharePoint site, open it up inside of this Lovable experience, is that fine? Can I
Yeah.
track it, whatever's happening, at least get like who's completed it or what they've done? You can do all of that inside of like Lovable. So does it need to be in the LMS? That probably is a good evaluation question, I think. But
Yeah. Good. Well, we'll stop there. I know we had a lot of other questions, but we're at time. So if we didn't answer your questions, I mean, feel free to post those in my community or go to Jeff's community or LinkedIn or wherever. And if you send them to me, and I can tag Jeff and he can jump in or vice versa. But I don't know, any final words on this, Jeff, that you would share with the group?
I think if anything, it's just helpful to go in and start playing with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's most people, they get very overwhelmed by it. I got to learn this. I got to learn that. I got to learn this. Then I have this and this. And I'm like, just take it one step at a time. Just go in, try to build a portfolio. Just try to build a couple pages. It's something that, I've literally been working on these apps since February. And so it's something that it's still new to me. And so there are still some things that I'm experiencing as well. My background does help, but I still have to take it one step at a time, and I still have to kick the tires. I still have to push the limits. And so I would say don't be afraid to start and at least kind of test things out and share it, and then give feedback and things like that. Yeah, that would be my feedback.
I would agree with that. I'll add on to that is that I think sometimes when you're on LinkedIn, there is a motivation by some folks to make AI seem really complicated and requires a special skill set, and then I think, or that's very threatening to your work and job. And I think the thing that I've discovered is that the more you play with it, the more you realize there isn't, I mean, the skill set that you have for AI isn't the skill set you think it is. You know what I mean? Like it has challenged me to use my imagination in ways that really have surprised me. And it's challenged me to get really specific in describing what I want and the outcome that I want. And I think that, that of course people call that prompt engineering. I'm just like, no, I think it's just giving instructions. That's a perfect example. Like prompt engineering is a perfect example of taking something as benign as like, no, just giving specific instructions and then making it more complicated than it is. I think my advice to everybody is like, I don't know, just don't be, just because there's the word coding in it doesn't mean you're coding. Like just go play with it. It's really simple.
Whatever language you can come up with. I mean, just in your language, it will probably, I mean, you might have to, there's times where I'm like, no, that was right. Now do this. And I have to change my language a little bit in it. But yeah, it doesn't take complex prompt engineering to do. It just takes you describing your imagination, you describing what you want, And that's really the key, is if you can describe it enough for AI to pick up on it. And it
Well,
does take practice too, like just going back and forth with it. So
the funny thing I'll say, and then I'm gonna put a link in chat for everybody. The funny thing it'll say is like I've spent literally 0 minutes ever in my life researching prompt engineering, but I have discovered that when I do need a complex prompt, rather than writing it, I have ChatGPT write it for me. I'm like, hey, this is what I want. Can you make a prompt? And it'll give it, and it works great. So like it's
yeah.
amazing. Even then, like I just use AI to do that for me, you know. So
Well, that's in my JavaScript and storyline course that I created. Basically, towards the end of it, we're just using ChatGPT to create the JavaScript.
yeah.
So we're not even creating the JavaScript ourselves. We're basically just saying, you know, just give me this type of code. So that's really, I mean, if you need help with the prompting, do exactly what you're saying. Just
Oh my
have
God.
ChatGPT help you with that. So
The future is now. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone.